We have this. Thank you everybody for being here. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to Alan Leeds, who is the fearless leader of our global webinar program. And Alan has a special welcome for all of us as everyone's entering the room. Thanks again for being here. And please feel free to type questions in the chat as we go along, or we'll catch them at the end. Thanks again.
Okay, thank you. Well, good afternoon, evening. Welcome. This is a pre-show. So I need some people to please take themselves off the camera view, off the non-view, and show themselves like Jeffrey. So Jeffrey, I'd like to thank you very much for for showing us up. And so Jeffrey, where are you calling in from? Why don't you put him in? Let him talk for a second.
Hi, Alan. Nice to meet you. I'm from Ecuador. I'm a friend of Ricardo.
Oh, you're a friend of Ricardo.
Yeah.
Okay, because Ricardo said that he had some friends, and I wasn't sure. I'm glad you came online.
I'm the only one. I'm the only one.
Okay, good. But I heard people from Ecuador are very imaginative. Is that correct? You have a good imagination?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay,
nice
good. So we're going to test that now, okay? Okay, so what I need you to do is I have a deck of cards here. It's an imaginary deck, and I'm going to throw it to you. And I want you to catch it and keep it up above, like, near your shoulders so everybody can see. Okay, I'm going to throw it to you now. Ready? Catch. Catch the deck. Good. Now,
got it.
Shuffle. Good, perfect. You got it. Great. Now shuffle them up, please.
Okay, let's see.
You got to take them out of the box. Yeah, take them out of the box and shuffle the cards.
Okay, I sent to Roger.
No, Jeffrey, you got it all the time.
How are you?
We only like Ecuador people. So take the deck now, and I'm going to ask you to throw them back to me, okay, when I count to three. Okay, 1, 2, 3, throw them. Oh, good. Thank you very much. Good. So Jeffrey, that was very good. Now, I want you to think of one card, because I think when you shuffled them, one card turned face down. And I don't know if you did that purposely or whatnot, but you have one card that's turned face down. What was the card that you turned face down in this whole deck?
I said a number and a color or what?
Yes, say the number, like the Jack of Diamonds, or yes, say the whole
thing. 8 in hearts red.
8 of hearts?
Yes.
Because if you look here, you see my deck here?
Yeah.
I have a deck, and every card is turned face one way, except one card is face down.
Okay.
You said the 8 of hearts?
Yes.
If I turn it over, you'll see that's
that's great.
So as you can see, if anybody know people from Ecuador, they have great imaginations. Congratulations. Okay, so we're on the half past the hour. I'm going to turn it over to Stacy to kick off the meeting.
Okay.
Am I in your phone?
Hey everyone, my name is Stacy Irby. I'm the Association Manager for the Association for Strategic Planning. Real quick, want to remind everybody to make sure you're on mute, just in case, so we're not picking up your office noise in the background. If you have any questions along the way, we welcome you to put them in the chat. Otherwise, our speaker, Ricardo, will be answering them at the end. And again, any questions, please feel free to let us know, but thank you so much for being here. We welcome you to join us. If you're not a member of ASP, please reach out to me. We'll have some information, some contact information to get to you after this. If you're interested in joining or attending other webinars along the way. Thank you again for coming, and I'll pass it back to you guys.
Okay, thank you. So as Stacy mentioned, can everybody see my screen okay? Stacy, we're all set?
You are not sharing your screen, but I can see you.
Okay, that's no good. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, so sorry. So as Stacy mentioned, we're a member of the Association of Strategic Planning, a non-for-profit international professional association founded in 1999. And our mission is to lead and support people and organizations and promoting a holistic approach to strategy management and set standards for which strategy can be achieved and understood through thought leadership, professional development, and certification. And because of that, we have members that are organizational leaders, business, government, nonprofit, academics, professors, authors, and students, and also strategy practitioners and consultants. So some of the member benefits are we have these monthly webinars and community practice discussions, which if you're a member, you'll get notification and emails about. We have free access to a strategy magazine, which is a very good authored magazine. We have past conference presentations and other thought leadership pieces. You have free access to the body of knowledge that we have, talking about what strategy is. And we have local and virtual networking with your peers.
Happy Tuesday. It's so.
And I put some people on mute if you could, Stacy, thanks.
Oops, I think I put you on mute accidentally, Alan. Sorry.
Sorry. Okay. So again, we have free access to strategic planning body of knowledge, local and virtual networking with your peers, and discount on events and certification. Our presenter today is Ricardo Mieja. And this is a picture taken by his kids, since Ricardo does a lot of hiking in Colombia. So if you're ever in Colombia and you want to hike, you'll see a picture of this in one of the state parks. And his daughter thinks that he looks very much like this dog or whatever animal it is. So by all means, ask Ricardo either where this picture is or go hiking with him. And he's been a member of the ASP for 5 years now and has been to a lot of our different presentations. So with that, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Ricardo, who will talk about our presentation today, was the role of the board, CEOs, executives, and strategic planning professionals, why strategy fails and how to fix it.
Okay, thank you. So I share my screen.
Down to the right.
Yeah, let me move that up so that I can put it.
Yep, the little icon that looks like a book, Ricardo, in the down right corner.
Okay, now it's full screen, it's all right?
Perfect.
Okay, so first of all, I want to thank the ACP for this opportunity and to allow many of my acquaintances down in Latin America to join the conference, and in particular to Alan, who encouraged me to present our work to the association. So thank you very much. So as Alan said, we want to share with you our experience with the strategy and some learnings we have had. And we call it reasons why strategy fails and how to fix it. And very important, we will mention the role of the board, of the CEO, the executive, and of course the strategic professional who are involved in the strategy development. The agenda, we will have a brief introduction, then we will concentrate on the main failures why strategy doesn't work or execution doesn't work, the tools how to fix it, and some takeaways for the end. A strategy, yeah, a 3-5 years budget plan or a continuous improvement plan is not the strategy. As Michael Porter has stressed very often, less than 30% of organizations have an effective strategy. I had the opportunity to interview Roger Martin, who is as well a member of the association. And Roger told me that according to his experience, and you know that Roger works mainly with the 5,000 Fortune companies, so probably the biggest companies around. And his experience was that less than 15% of the companies he did work for had a real strategy, which makes a big challenge for us because as strategy professionals, it means that many of our clients or many of the companies do not have a real path, do not have a purpose for the future. And if you do not have a strategy, it means that any path is good. and it is a contradiction to the professional way how corporations develop. So it means that there is a huge opportunity for strategy professionals to do a big improvement in this field. Let's see the view of different stakeholders around this matter. When the strategist professional view is that when it didn't work, he probably says that management was not able to apply the wonderful plan he did develop. But on the other hand, the management is thinking that the strategist professional didn't make a good plan. And at the end, the people around wonder if there was a real plan about their strategy. So those are typical views which we have to overcome in our work. Other point important as introduction is that many organizations are trying to survive without a clear strategic orientation. You will know that strategy is choosing and discharging which projects I will concentrate and which I will discharge, which often is a puzzle for many professionals in strategy, and we will talk a bit further about that later. As you know, the board is the main function of the board is to help management developing the strategy. So we think that the strategy consultant or professional has to be careful, because if he has a good board, the board should be the best partner for the strategy consultant, and it's very important then that they learn how the board works. And our experience is that board meetings are very busy, reviewing lots of numbers, presented in difficult ways to understand and to get conclusions. We will develop that later. And boards do not have enough opportunities to discuss about the competitive environment, because the operative matters take most of the time of the board meeting. Let's see then the main failures why strategy fails. Failure one, environmental, social, and governance and innovation a real concern. When you talk about environmental, social, and governance, think that governance include diversification, diversity, and inclusion. If you look at the board of the company you are working with, the board should have diversity and inclusion, which is important. And if I mention an experience we had with a food processor down here, they had a board of 7 people, all with the same background. I will try to, in parallel, show how was that experience, and it will help to understand our work. So when you talk about environmental, social, and governance, you should think that those are important topics which are not just to be handled by management, but should be scaled to the board as well. The same as innovation. So our recommendation is that when facing strategic formulation with a client, it's very important that strategy, environmental, social, and governance and innovation are scaled to the board since the very beginning. In this food processing company I mentioned about, the management was very curious and very much interested in ESG and innovation, but they didn't take those topics to the board. So there was no real escalation of that. And if the board is the one that approved the strategy, it's important that the board learns since the very beginning about those topics. Failure 2, is the board involved in powerful strategic conversations? Our experience is that most of the board members are C-suite executives with a lot of operative experience. So when they go to the board, they want to show the operative experience, and unfortunately, they then spend a lot of time on operational discussions and not on strategy. So there has to be, as our recommendation is that as strategic professional, we have to consult the board as well in regards to its composition and how do they spend their time, which otherwise will stick to operational discussion with very bad results. Failure 3, focus. Very often we find companies that as a result of a strategy work, they have 10 or 15 projects which will have to share resources, time, and attention, and at the end, nothing of them come true. So it's very important that as strategy professionals, we help clients to focus on 3-5 projects at the most, and we will expand that later on as well. With this food processing company I mentioned about, as far as we were working with them, we learned that there was a major misalignment among the different stakeholders, which coincides with the figures that Kaplan and Norton present in his book, Strategy, the Focus Organization, a very good book about that they launched some years ago. And as is shown here, according to the experience, from the strategy approved by the board in USA, less than 50% of the senior executives were aligned, less than 20% of middle managers were aligned, and less than 5% of the operative personnel were aligned. In England, it's even worse. So it shows that as strategy professionals, we have to do a very strong work how to get the different stakeholders not just involved, but as well aligned around the strategy. In summary, we have 4 major failures that the strategy professional has to fight and see how to overcome, which is how ESG and innovation become a real concern and how to scale that to the board discussions, how the board have more powerful conversations in regard to strategy and not in operational matters, to concentrate, to focus, to choose and discharge, and improve the alignment among the different stakeholders that, as you see, is an international problem. Let's see the tools to overcome those failures. But before we as strategy professionals work in the tools, it's very important that we learn a lot about the company we are working with, so that we, as strategy professionals, know about the company, the profit and loss, the balance sheet, the competition, what's going around the environment, which products do they have, where are the opportunities. And very important in our experience is the skills and how is the people, the C-suite people and the board of directors, because if one of the main objectives of a good strategy is which skills the company should develop to be successful in the future, it's important that as a strategy professional, you have a real knowledge of what are the skills of the C-suite people and the board of directors. Then we can see the tools, how we can overcome the failures we mentioned before. Tool number 1, ESG and innovation as imperative. Then if you start with the discussion with the board and management since the very beginning about environmental, social and governance, you will face any problem you have there. In this food processing company, as I mentioned, they have 7 board members, most of them with the same background, and we found that it was spending most of the time in operational matters. So we suggested some changes that we will see later on. And innovation, which was a major concern for management, again, they didn't take that to the board, so we suggested that any work in innovation should be incorporated to the strategy and to the board discussions. And so that's what they did, and we will see the results later on. Tool 2A, what we have found in our experience is that most of C-suite executives, again, they are very much concerned with operational matters. What they bring to the board in their presentation is operational matters, and they do not bring how they will impact the organization in the next 3-5 years. So we suggest that as a strategic professional, you should work with the C-suite people, how to present to the board, and to check that the content of those presentations is in the following way, that they include, of course, the topics to be approved by the board if necessary. It should be at the beginning. A brief report about the metrics and position of the department. We well know that the board of directors has to make a follow-up of the daily business of the company, but they should not spend that much time on those 2 points so that they spend enough time on the third point, which are the initiatives that that department has to impact the company in the next 3-5 years. Insofar the board members have the information in advance, at least 1 week before the board meeting, then they will be very well informed, and unless in place of having an informative board meeting, they will have a board which rich discussions and very fruitful discussions from where strategy is the main concern. So the only way to achieve that is that the board gets good information and they get that information in advance. As I said, items 1 and 2 should be evacuated quickly, and the debate concentrate on item 3. Again, as strategic professionals, we should consider that our best partners are board members. So if we have a good board and well informed, they will be the best partners for the work we are developing. In our experience, we believe that that process has to be repeated at least during 3 boards, so that you have the opportunity to coach the C-suite people how to present, how to do the work, and that you are present at the board meeting and you observe how much time they spend in the operational matters, and that you can help them to spend more time in strategy than in the daily business. Here it's very important to mention, as you probably know, those who read the everyday store of Amazon, if you read the book, you'll see that PowerPoint presentations are forbidden at the board meeting. I have seen a trend in many companies that in place of PowerPoint presentation, the C-suite executives are obliged to present a story in which, in 4-6 pages, they present the whole case of his area, how the competitors behave, which are the challenges, some examples of what consumers or clients think of the company and new products, so that you develop a full story. And if you share that in advance with the board members, then the discussion will be much richer than just with a PowerPoint presentation. When the C-suite person is forced to write a story, he will have to look for different points about the strategy he's presenting, and he will be forced to think more about the content that when we are working in a PowerPoint. As mentioned before, confirm that the board of management have good debates about the future, and make sure that the right composition and performance of the board are aligned with what we are saying. And then it's very important in this process of coaching the C-suite people to coach them how to present. In the company we're talking about, the food processing company, we learned that many of the products of the company, and you see here on the column on the right, on the left, the 4 products of the company, the main 4 products of the company were not growing very strongly, just the 4 products. And from the discussion we have had, we learned that there was a huge opportunity in consumer products. That was a food processing company, but they saw there was opportunity in consumer products. So we asked them to check the personal care market where they saw an opportunity. So they presented an idea of a table like this. We suggested that that was not a very informative presentation for the board, and that they should do that storytelling. And in place of that way to present it, the table, they should use a graph like that one, donde you see the trends of personal care market, but the time was very attractive with a good growth. And then you saw that product 1, 2, and 3 and 4 were decreasing, or product 1, 2, and 3 were not growing. If you see up the numbers on the graph, you will see that they are up and downs, but nothing special. While product 4 was decreasing and product 5 was growing. But at the end, the company was losing market share, losing sales. And so that was a good material for discussion, because then we had an opportunity in a growing market as is personal care, and a discussion for what to do with the food market. We will go further on that detail later on. And then tool 2B is that with that knowledge as professional, strategic professional, you have developed after meeting with 3 boards and with the C-level people several times, we suggest to interview at least 20 stakeholders and learn about very important topics if you want to develop and to design a good strategy. What each of those interview stakeholders think about the purpose of the company. It's very important to see each of them, what do they think about the purpose, what do they think about the environmental sustainability and governance issues, how do they see, how each of them see that important issue. And very important to check as well opportunities for innovation and growth in new products, new markets, new distribution channels, new clients, new regions. So there is a good deal of information you can get once you have learned so much about the company, and then you spend some time with different stakeholders learning how they see the opportunities of that company. Of course, check about the strengths and weaknesses that each of those interviewed people think. And as mentioned before, what skills the company should develop for the future, because this is one of the core points for a good strategy. What skills do we have to develop to overcome the challenges of the future? And as strategic professionals performing the interviews, it's very important to inspire each person to propose great projects that could make the difference. We are not talking about a continuous improvement plan. We are talking about great projects that might make the big change of the company in the future. And for that purpose, it's very important as a strategic professional, you teach them, you inspire them to talk about that. Do not forget that strategy is 40% data analysis, but 50-60% creativity. We do not put in our work a lot of creativity and force the people we work with about new ideas and new projects. We won't be so successful at the end of the day. With the interviews, then, with all that information we have collected, we have different ways to review that information. And in this particular case, we have here the different stakeholders. A are the shareholders, B are the board of directors, C are C-suite people, D are suppliers, E are clients, and F are employees of the company. And then we graph that, and so we can learn what they think about different topics. Let's see the questions. For instance, here, the launch of a new food product. As we saw, there was no much success with the product they had, so there was an opportunity with new food products. So there was concern, but they didn't place this in the highest branch. Internationalization, to go abroad and start selling and producing outside the country. There was a consensus around that as well, but it was not in the highest point. But the opportunity with personal care, there was consensus in that regard, and with the highest ranking or the highest point. So that's something that gives us a very important information to study later on, as we will see. In regards to if becoming a low-cost producer, you will see that there is a major misalignment. So through the interviews, if you execute, if you do the right questionnaire and you have the right questions to the different stakeholders, you will collect very rich and important information which will help you to guide which proposal will you do to the company as you work on. Then we got tool 3, in which as a strategic professional, you just sit with your team and review all the information you have had so far. So you already have information about the organization, you know about the balance sheet, you know about the profitability of the different products, you know about the environment and the people. Through the storytelling, you know how are the opportunities of each area and what is each C-suite executive expecting for the future of his area. And with the stakeholders' contribution and with a protection matrix, you can come to the 3-5 key cross-cutting projects that should be the final work of your job. With that once you see and outcrop the key projects, we suggest why 3 to 5. It's important to stress that after reviewing the Standard & Poor's 500 companies, we have noticed that most of them stick to 3-5 projects. So we have the experience that more than 5 projects is a lot. So if we want to be successful, we again have to concentrate and have focus, not spread the opportunities in too many projects, because again, as we said, resources, people, and time won't help us to achieve the results we want. And tool 4 is that with all the information and the sieve and outcrop projects you have, then we suggest that you go to management and board and discuss the selected project you suggest and see the required resources which are required. And of course, with the information you get on those 2-3 workshops, you have to introduce the right adjustment to the proposal you had. And it's very important that at least one of those projects should deliver short-term results. It is always when you have a strategy and the fruits of that strategy will have to wait too long, people will lose enthusiasm and the speed we require. So it's very important that at least one project should deliver short-term results. And once the strategy by the board, the management, and the strategic professional agree and is approved, one of each project has to get a responsible, rough resources that will be required, a timeline for the project. And again, as part of tool 4, as we mentioned before, alignment is very important. So exit communication, the strategy, we just saw the problem that we mentioned as Kaplan and Norton graph, how as far as you go down in the structure of the company, the appearance and the perception of the strategy is completely different. So a very strong communication plan is very important, hopefully in a very easy to remember way, and of course in the language of the organization. And afterward, monitor the execution process, because we all will know that strategy formulation is one thing and execution is another. And as a strategy professional, you should join to the follow-up of the execution, so that you make sure that the plan you suggested come to a successful end. And again, promote powerful conversation with that storytelling in such a way as well that emergency situations that always appear are properly adapted and absorbed. When we come back to the experience we have with this food processing company, as we mentioned, there were 7 people, most of them, all of them male, with homogeneous profiles and operational conversation. The shareholders accepted to change the board members. They brought a lady, we wanted 2, but they brought 1 lady who had a lot of skills in human resources and skill development. So that was something new. And according to what we saw, they brought a fellow from an international multinational company with a lot of experience in consumer care products. As you saw, we had already that concern if there were opportunities in consumer products, so they brought that and reduced the number from 7 to 5. And the result of that, as the board became much more concentrated in a strategic conversation, and the operational matters were evacuated very quickly. So this company, they thought themselves as a food processing company. They thought that the industry was very important. They have a distribution network. But after the many discussions, it was learned, and most people consider that they had a major strength in the distribution, and therefore they could grow from a food processing company to a consumer's product company. So they thought that they could acquire a personal care company, so bring that to the distribution they had, and that's what they did. They accepted and learned and were convinced at the end that the strength was in the distribution. So they acquired a personal care company and expanded the distribution. What were the accomplishments as the result of all that? Well, they grew 20% in sales the following year, because once the personal care producer was acquired, they already had the distribution and the trucks and the account. So that was a very smooth path to follow. The sales force with a bigger portfolio who open new accounts because they have that bigger portfolio, and the average ticket improved. That made the sales force highly motivated. With the new production line in the personal care, the process people, the operational equipment learn about new processes, and particularly in packaging. So the learning they had in the new company about packaging was brought to the food processing, and that helped to raise efficiencies in all production lines. What was the result? That particular company at the end accepted the expansion to personal care products. Once they were successful to that, which took them a couple of years, they reviewed the strategy, what was mentioned before, and they, at the end, expanded to Central America with new production factories in Central America, and they brought into the line new food brands, because as we saw, the products they had were not very successful at that moment, and a new food brand helped them to impulse further the company. In summary, for each failure, we have a tool. ESG and innovation should be imperatives. Please, as strategic professionals, look at the board. They are, again, as I said, the best partners you can get there. So look which is the composition, how you can bring value to the discussion you will have as a strategic professional. Second, involve the board in the discussion since the very beginning. And for that, it's good that you do some coaching to the C-suite people, how to present and how to bring the right information to the board. And with the information you have gained in that part, interview the stakeholders, that you get a better survey and glimpse of what they think of the different topics we mentioned. Then focus on the main topics. Learn to choose and discharge is very important, and validate the information you had with those workshops we mentioned with management and board, and then exceed in communications. So if we think of the takeaways of what we propose is as a strategic professional, we suggest that you should join the board meetings and make sure the discussions are rich, and that during the process and after to follow up the execution. So not only join the board at the beginning of the discussion, but as well once the projects are approved, join the board and the management so that there is a good follow-up of the execution process. Try to understand the difference between stakeholders and pave the way to align them, and then hear the good interviews and to interview different stakeholders. And a good number will help you a lot in your purpose and in your job. Be creative, of course, and to see if an outgrow diverse few initiatives. Again, choose and discharge is a very important process of our work, and present the results in an easy to remember way using that storytelling that, as you know, is a topic that is being discussed more and more at the board table and in our daily life. Finally, we should not forget that as a strategy professional, we are not the creator ni the owner of the strategy. Our job is to help people to get involved and to find the strategy. And we think that's very important as well, that we know with precision which is our role when we help a company to find the strategy. I want to thank you for your attention, and I understand that we would like to have some time for questions, so I am open to, we will have some 15, 20 minutes if you have questions. I will be glad to take some questions if there are any.
Well, thank you, Ricardo. That was very interesting and provocative. One question we had from a person was, what do you do for things that are unexpected that happen? Like, for instance, the pandemic. How do you allow for agility within the strategy?
In fact, many of our experiences, Alan, was during the pandemic. So as this is not a work which is performed in 1 month, but you usually for this whole process, you need at least 6 months work. So you will have time to adapt very easily to what's going on. So the pandemic, as I mentioned, we had many clients in which we work with during the pandemic times. So we had the opportunity to see how the pandemic was affecting that particular company and do together with board and management the right adaptations to the process. That might be that would be the answer, Alan, to that question.
Yeah. So in other words, the pandemic might be a good place to a starting point in order, or an excuse, if you will, to say, hey, it looks like things are changing. What do we need to change? And that might be a good way of starting that. In other words, can we use the pandemic as an excuse for innovation and change?
I think the pandemic, Alan, has forced a lot of us to be creative and imaginative, because we have faced phenomena that things that we never thought were possible. So my experience is that we all, as strategy professionals, had to become more creative and imaginative, because as we see, we are facing things that we have not forecast before.
Okay. Another question was, how do you, if I'm a strategy professional and I'm working with the CEO and the different management team, the C-suite, how do I approach some of the board members? Because many companies, their consultants or their internal people don't talk to board members. Who do you ask, or how do you go get that started?
Excellent question, Alan, and that was something we faced at the beginning. If as a strategy professional, you are not going to get involved with the board, you are going, your job will be very diminished, very much diminished. So our approach to that problem is, since the very beginning, we state that we have to get the board involved, and we ask that we have to go to the board meetings in such a way that we confirm that the board is really involved in the strategy development. That's a must in our work, and we believe that's a plus if we want to be successful in the future.
So in other words, asking your team that brought you in, or if you're on the strategic planning group, say, hey, can I attend some of the board meetings? Or maybe say, hey, can we get some opinions from the board to get as the first step to break in?
Think of that problem in this way, Alan. If you are working with a company where you are going to be the strategy consultant or professional, and the board is not going to be involved in that work, what is that board doing? What for that board? So you have to raise a major discussion, because if that particular company wants you to work with them, but the board is not involved, so the question you should ask, so what for the board?
Okay, good. Andres asked, in a family business environment, how do you encourage the board of directors, usually composed of family members, to quote, force, unquote, those strategic discussions in order to seek alignment?
Excellent question again, Alan. Is one of our major concerns, and here we have a client of us where we faces that problem. I won't mention the name, but I think is the experience you develop in that regard and the conversation you had with the family, so that they learn that diversity and external and independent directors are a plus when you are going to discuss a strategy. Then that family, if it's mature enough, will accept that. But no doubt is one of the major obstacles we find, but again, is one in which we have to put most of our resources to convince the family that the family had to get rid of many family members from the board and bring outside members who will enrich the discussion. That's a major topic.
So what you're saying is, if there are a lot of family members on the board, you get some to disinvite others, or how do you do that?
Yeah, we belong to the Family Film Association, the Family Film Institute. We belong to a film tank in which we consider very often they consider how to improve the governance of family businesses. And after those many years, we have learned how to teach families that they have to mature in regards to government. And let me put it in this way. If you have a family business where the shareholders are family, where the board members are family, and where management are families, how can you have governance if governance require a major principle, which is the success of governance depends on independence of the different governance bodies. So there cannot be independence in the three main governance bodies of a family business, which are shareholders, board of directors, and management, if all of them are composed by the same people. As you cannot fire the shareholders and you cannot fire the management, the family members in management, the easiest way to succeed is fire some board members who are family members and bring new knowledge to the board. And we have been doing that for 15 years, Alan, and that's a major topic in our work, and we believe that this is very important.
So in a family business, what you need to do is you need to get some board members to decide to resign, or you talk to the president?
To resign, of course, to resign. Think of that, which is a major problem when you talk about the strategy in a family business. The board, let's say the board are the boss, are the superior, the hierarchy superior of the management. And you have at the board the family, and that same family is the management team. So how can you manage a board where the management is sitting at the chief? There is no discussion. There is no deep and productive discussion about the strategy. So our experience after so many years is you have to rebuild the board if you want to be successful in the strategy field.
Okay, good. Woody asked a question is regarding setting priorities. And how do you distinguish between routine operations and change initiatives? And then after you distinguish between the two, how do you then decide how many of those new change priorities or initiatives do you do?
Excuse me, again, Alan, I didn't
Sure.
get it.
Well, how do you distinguish between routine operations and change initiatives?
Very important again, yeah. Operational matters are, as I said, the daily business. And when we talk about operation, we are talking about efficiencies, about the daily metric, which how you see the performance of the company. But more important than that, which of course the board has to have a close follow up of that metrics, but our point is that they should not spend most of the board meeting in that. And how to differentiate when you think where are the high potentials in this company? How do we measure the opportunities of the 10 high potential executives who will manage the company in the next 10, 15 years, who will be the management in 10, 15 years time, and which skills do we have to develop with them so that we become competitive in 15 years time. Those are discussions which enrich the future of the company. And if you think of that, you will see the difference. Those discussions are just regarding what is going to be the future of the company. When you talk about the efficiencies and the balance sheet and the profit and loss, you are talking about the past, which is very important. But that's not the way to arrange and solve the future. So the way to differentiate that is future talk and strategic talks are always involving what's going to be in the future. And the operational matters are usually metrics of past things.
Okay, and I know it's a general question, but how much percentage of time or effort do you think you spend on those new strategic initiatives?
Yeah, again, as I mentioned, we believe as strategic professionals, those initiatives should be proposed by the C-suite people. So let's say the person in charge of marketing. The person in charge of marketing, what we do is help him to be creative, how to do the right content for the presentation, to split the daily matters, what happened in the marketing field, and what was the past and what he achieved in the past. But again, what type of new products will be convenient for the company? Which are the new areas in which they can open the market? Where are the opportunities for growth? And in that way, we help the marketing people to come with new ideas, but we do a coaching work, but the important work has to be developed by the C-suite people.
Right. I think I've seen many companies, what they do, like HP, they have their make initiatives, but then they have their breakaway. And they kind of encourage each department to have one or two breakaway discussions. So if you get everybody in the company thinking about innovation, then you can then have the board decide which of those 2 or 3 or 4 projects or initiatives to go work on.
That's right, Alan. But as mentioned before, unfortunately, and it's a big proportion, as we see from the statistic that from what we have run from Roger Martin and from Michael Porter, more than 70% of the companies do not scale those discussions to the board. So there is a huge opportunity in our work for that field.
Okay, good. And one other question was, what was asked by William. Does this approach allow for bottom-up innovation from the rank and file?
Again, Alan, I couldn't get it. Excuse me.
So you're looking at the board, you're trying to set innovation, you're trying to come up with new ideas.
Yeah.
Does that allow for the people below, the workers to have innovation suggested to the board and up through their ranks?
Excellent question.
Participation by the people.
Yeah, excellent question, Alan. Let me point it this way. Innovation is not anymore. If we think of quality department, if we think 40 years ago, the quality department was a quality chief who was in charge of quality. But now we know that quality is done by every worker. Every person is in charge of quality. Innovation is the same. We believe that innovation is a culture in which has to be spread all around the company. So if I am in charge of a department and I am the sweet people and I am in charge of operation, let's say, at the company, it's my obligation to make sure that every person in my area has the opportunity to propose ideas, to discuss with the teams, and that they have the right delegation to hear what innovation are down there at the bottom, and that can scale up to the right level. But no doubt, innovation is not anymore the function of a person, but of everybody at the company.
Okay, so what you're saying is the role of a strategic or a change agent or a strategy professional is to encourage the board to come up with innovation or ask the people, what kinds of new things do we need to do to project for the next 3 to 5 years? But I'm also hearing that as a strategic consultant, you have to get input from the people below, from not only looking at the voice of the customer, but the voice of internal people to come up with what those innovations might be.
No doubt, for sure, Alan, and therefore we stress that the interviews play a major role because they will give the opportunity to different stakeholders to present their opinion, and you will see how much innovation and a culture of inspiration is down the level in that company. If you have a company where strategy and innovation is just at the top level, that won't be, again, very successful.
Okay, so what you're saying is like tools, 2, 3, and 4 are really to understand what the stakeholders want by doing interviews and then measure it in a way that you can visualize and show people, hey, looks like we need to look at the future, like that food service company in order to do it. One other question for you, Ricardo, what do you think is the most important takeaway for the people here? You talked about the board meetings, you talked about the differences between stakeholders, sieve and outcrop, but what would advice, you've done this for a long time, what's your one piece of advice that strategic consultants or planners can do?
Yeah, very easy, Alan. And it comes, I try to stress that, and I hope I was successful, but our best partner working with a company are the board members. If you have the right board with the right composition and the right people, you work with it much easier and much more successful than if you have not. So if you do your answer, no doubt our job will be much better done if we think of governance. And governance is how is that board, how does it work, that board, and how is the composition.
Okay, well, Ricardo, thank you very much for your good thoughts. We have not really done much about the board and the role of the board from the ASP, and thank you for bringing that up. And also thank you for those guests that we have from Colombia or South America that joined. By all means, you can find out more about the ASP through our internet website, or by all means ask Ricardo. So I'd like to thank you all for participating in today's webinar. Hope you have a good summer vacation, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you, everybody, and thanks to the ACP.
Okay.